Congratulations on making it on time. I see Mary Strowman's raising her hand. Glad to make
No,
it.
we read your email.
So, my question for you this morning is what is too much to give to serve or honor the Lord? What's too much? Now, I suspect a lot of you sitting there will say, well, there's no such thing. Nothing's too much, but we're going to talk about that a little bit. What's too much? Our gospel lesson today, we have a story that shows up in various forms in the different gospels. But we have Mary, who's paid Jesus a tremendous honor here. Now, the context of this story kind of sets it in a little bit different light. You see, John goes into great detail about what she did. First of all, he starts, he says she has a pound of pure nard. Okay? So it would have been a Roman pound that matters. 12 ounces of pure nard. Now, perfume then, just like now, would have typically been diluted, cut with all kinds of different things. Still would have the same effect. John's very deliberate here to say this is a pound of pure nard. This is the best that you could get. And we're told that it cost 300 denarii, which Judas raises a fuss about. That would have been the average worker's wage. So in today's terms, you're talking about $35,000. This was extravagant in every sense of the word. And it didn't have to be. She could have anointed his feet with the same cut perfume that other people used and gotten, a little bottle of it or whatever for $10 at the grocery store, whatever, I don't know. You get the idea. But that's not what happened. This is the best, and it's a lot of it. And furthermore, we see a very strange situation unfold. There's a woman who kneels at a man's feet who's not her husband. Didn't do that. And she lets down her hair. You definitely didn't do that unless you were a prostitute. Then she touches his feet. Another thing you absolutely did not do. In fact, we've talked about how that was a job that was reserved for the lowest slave in the household. In that culture, you did not touch another person's feet. Everything about this situation was over the top. I can imagine people who left that dinner probably be like, did that really just happen? Can you believe what we just saw? That was crazy. It was extravagant in every sense of the word. And when Judas questions it, which I think at one level you'd say, yeah, $35,000 worth of perfume, and say, whoa, what is going on here? Now John gives his own interpretation of why that was. But Judas, perhaps like some of us and some of the people there, were like, this is extravagant. It's over the top. And Jesus' response is, you will have the poor with you always, but you will not always have me. Now that in no way should we interpret that to dismiss the needs of those around us. That's not what this is saying at all. It's saying for this time and this place, you have the Son of God right here with you. This is okay. Leave her alone. She's doing me a great honor. And I would add to it further that when we're serving the Lord and serving one another, we have this idea that there's scarcity, that there's this very finite, limited resource. When the truth is, God has made enough to go around. So Jesus says, no. Leave her be. So my question for you is, what is too much? What is too much? Now, Paul talks a little bit about it in our New Testament reading. He talks about everything that he's had. And he says, that in terms of the way the world judges us, the way, and he's talking about particularly Jewish people here, he says, the way that you would judge me, he said, I've got it all. Right? I was born in the tribe of Benjamin, circumcised on the 8th day. I was a Pharisee. I was zealous. He said, I've got it all. He said, but I count all that as what? Rubbish. Garbage. Worthless. None of that matters in the face of a relationship with Jesus Christ. He goes on and says, I've suffered loss of all things and I regard them as rubbish in order that I may gain Christ and be found by Him. Beloved, do not consider that I have made it my own. And that is, he says, don't take it that I'm saying I've arrived. That I've gotten everything that I seek. He says, but this one thing I do. This one thing I do, and I love this line. I refer to it sometimes as spiritual amnesia. He says, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal of the prize of our heavenly call of God in Jesus Christ. In other words, he says, none of that matters. Good, bad, indifferent. None of the things that I used to hold on to that I deemed were so important. Pride, ego, possessions, power. All of that I count as rubbish. He said this one thing is all that matters. It is what lies ahead. And he says, and I strain with all my being towards this goal, this heavenly prize of a relationship with God. Paul says, give it all for this one thing. So my question for you was, what is too much? Now, how many of you have ever thought to yourself or said out loud, and I know some of you said it out loud because you said it to me. When I'm at a party, somebody's at my house, things, we don't talk politics or what?
Religion.
Religion. There you go. Don't talk politics or religion. Don't want to talk about that stuff. I don't want to upset anyone. I don't want anyone to upset me. So we're not going to talk about this. Okay. But what about evangelism? Ooh, I said it.
The E word.
What about sharing the good news? Now, I know what some of y'all are thinking right now, because I've had Episcopalians quote this to me for as long as I can remember. Thank goodness for good old St. Francis. And you know what's coming, because St. Francis said, go and share the good news of Christ. And I'm paraphrasing this a little. Go and share the good news of Christ, using words only if you have to. Now, as Episcopalians, we take that and say, oh, yes, we really probably shouldn't talk about it. St. Francis is saying to us, transform yourself to be so loving, so kind, that you shouldn't have to use words. People will be drawn to Christ by the love of God flowing through you and from you. He's in no way saying, don't talk about it. Don't upset anybody about it. Don't ever say anything that somebody might be a little uncomfortable with. It's not what he's saying at all. That's just one example of the myriad of ways in our lives where we have things that are kind of out of bounds. So this would be too much. You think about Mary and the situation. She broke all kinds of convention, all kinds of rules in her act. And yet, it was pleasing to God. Because he understood, he knew her heart. He knew that her intent was good and pure and that she meant to honor him. So he says, leave her alone. Leave her alone. And some of the other versions say, her story will be told wherever my story is told. Because she's done this thing. This is good. So what are you holding back from God? What is off limits? What's out of bounds? Is it your money? When I have a stewardship or sermon pledge, in the fall, and I say to you, hey, look, God's asking you to tithe 10%. Get out of here. What are you holding back? Or maybe you're at 10%. But maybe you should be at 50%. The point is, it's not a box to check off. So I say, well, okay, I'm at 10% here, and I do 2 hours a week of helping others, and I pray for 15 minutes a day, and whatever your other checklist item is. It's not about that. It's about the intent of your heart. And only you can know the truth of what you're holding back from God. And I suspect if I went through the list, every one of us would find that we're holding back in some way almost everything that we deem important. Whether that's our material wealth. Had this conversation just the other day in Bible study. Well, I don't know if I could give more. So you're saying if I came to you and said, I'm going to take 20% of your money right today, you just say, well, just don't even feed me. I can't even conceive of trying to survive in a world with 20% less money than I. No. We make choices, and I'm not here to give you a hard time about that, but the reality is we make choices about everything that we do. If I say to you, do you need to study more? Do you need to pray more? You say, oh, I couldn't possibly find time in my busy day to do that. While my shows are on tonight, I got, I miss those. And then my wife's going to want to talk my ear off for an hour, and then, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. My kids need my attention. We all have these things that we hold back from the Lord. It might be our time. It might be our energy. It might be our money. But the number one thing, and where it all boils down to, where it all starts and ends with, is our heart. It's our heart that we hold back from the Lord. And not just with the Lord, but we do it with everybody around us as well. That vulnerability that we talk about sometimes, that willingness to allow people in. There are just certain places where we don't want too much. There are places where we don't want that light to shine on. Some of those places are dark and some of them aren't. But when God comes knocking, knowingly or unknowingly, all too often we say no. No. So my question for you is, what is too much? What is too much? And if you're sitting here saying nothing, I would agree. And if you feel like you're there, I would disagree. None of us are there. We all have those things that we hold back from the Lord. The question is, what is yours? And what are you going to do about it? I don't need you to just identify it. That's obviously the first step. I want to know what you're going to do about it. What's the next step? That might be prayer. It might be study. It might be talking to others. It might be reaching out for spiritual direction. But there is a next step to whatever it is. But that's on you. I can't do it for you. Your spouse can't do it for you. Jesus can't do it for you. You have to do it. You have to decide. What am I holding back from the Lord? And what am I going to do about it? Let us pray. Dear Lord, we give you thanks for all the many blessings you bestowed upon us. And we ask you to open our hearts and minds to understand all those things that we hold back from you. be it time, energy, most of all our love, our forgiveness, our hearts, our souls, our minds. Help us to open those to your will, to understand your ways, to believe in the promises that you've made to us, that you will give us those things which we seek at the deepest part of our soul. Help us to trust in that, and to welcome you with open arms. All this we ask in your Son's holy name.
Amen.